You suggested just now that we move on to considering philosophical ideas about literature, and I think it would be very interesting to do that. Which of the philosophical views of art that there have been would you pick out as being the most interesting to consider?
I find Plato's very interesting because it raises all the subjects which one wants to clarify one's mind about. One wants to defend art. I don't know. I think philosophers haven't written very well on art on the whole, partly because they very often put it in as a minor issue. They've got a general view, say, of morals or metaphysics and so on, and they put in their view of art as a kind of piece that's got to be fitted into the picture, and don't perhaps consider it too seriously or too generously, or not generously enough.
There is, if I could chip in there is one philosopher whom I would exempt from that charge. I agree that is generally true, but I think Schopenhauer is an exception. I think he is genuinely deep on the subject of art. He, unlike nearly all other philosophers, he did regard art as being central to human life and had some very profound things to say about it.
Yes, this is perfectly true. Yes, I agree with you here. Yes, yeah. I think that Kant is very interesting about art. I think his distinction between the sublime and the beautiful. The beautiful is purely formal. The sublime is to do with a kind of moral appeal to the emotions, which actually he didn't think of as being art at all. But that distinction, I think, in itself is very informative. But on the whole, philosophers have tended to be polemical about art in a rather fruitless way. I mean, they've tended to produce, and of course any discussion about art tends endlessly to produce again and again a certain sort of either-ors about art, that art's got to be one thing or the other.
Yes, I think this is the trouble with any philosophy of art, isn't it, that it's exclusive. I mean, once you think that all art has got to be of a certain kind to fit in with your particular theory, then it follows from that everything that doesn't fit in with that theory isn't art.
Yes, I think this, fortunately, artists don't pay too much attention to philosophers. They just carry on. But I think philosophy can be damaging to art in the sense. I think the people it damages, of course, are students who long to have theories. I mean, one sees this very often, that young people long to feel that art, too, can be explained, or the aim of art can be explained. I mean, there's these very familiar sorts of fights, or either-ors, that should art be for art's sake, or should it be for society's sake? And this, this is quite interesting too, because again, if one's instincts are to reject this choice, which mine are, then to say exactly why can be quite informative.
We've been talking up to this point about philosophy and literature, or philosophical ideas about literature. Let's move on now to philosophy in literature. Let me say what I mean by that. First of all, there have been some famous philosophers or thinkers very like philosophers, like Voltaire, who've also been major novelists. I mean, not only Voltaire, but Rousseau, in our own time, Jean-Paul Sartre. Or among simply famous novelists, there are some who've been obviously very profoundly influenced by certain rather philosophical ideas. I mean, Tolstoy appends to his novel War and Peace a great long epilogue in which he explains that in this novel he's been trying to express a certain philosophy of history. Or if you take another famous Russian novelist, Dostoevsky, he's often described by existentialists as the greatest of all existentialist writers, because he's involved in certain kinds of problem that they themselves are also concerned with. Or one can think of a very large number of examples, can't one? I mean, it's obvious that Proust, in À la recherche du temps perdu, is deeply concerned with problems about time, which is also one of the traditional problems that philosophers have been concerned with, and so on. Now, what I would like to get at in the form of a question to you is, what sort of role do you think that philosophy can play in literature? In, let us take novels, for example.
Well, I think it had better keep out on the whole. I think that people say these things about writers like Tolstoy and Dostoevsky in order to have something interesting to say about them, as it were. I mean, obviously, writers are influenced by the climate of ideas of their time, and they're likely to be educated people who know a little bit about philosophical change and so forth. But the amount of philosophy they succeed in expressing in the book is very small, really. I think as soon as philosophy gets into a novel, work of literature, it ceases to be philosophy. It becomes something else. It becomes a plaything of the writer, and quite rightly. I mean, a pure novel of ideas. I mean, I don't know that it's very likely that it will. The harder the writer works to present his ideas, the less good his work of art is likely to become. I think it's a very dangerous activity. I think that, again, you see the great 19th century writers get away with quite a lot of idea play in their writings, but if you look at it, you couldn't possibly regard it as philosophy. It's idea play.
Well, I wonder if I agree with you. I mean, you say that people say this kind of thing about philosophers in order to have something interesting to say. Well, no doubt there is a lot of pseudo-talk about novels of this kind. But I did mention, for example, that Tolstoy himself says in War and Peace that this is one of the things he's trying to do. Or take a major English novel like Laurence Sterne's Tristram Shandy. I mean, not only was that directly influenced by Locke's theories about the association of ideas, but there's quite a bit about that in the novel, and in terms which obviously refer to the novel itself. In other words, Sterne was quite clearly doing something which he himself related to Locke's theory of the association of ideas. So I think there are, in fact, a number of instances of great novels, I mean really outstanding novels, where the use of philosophical ideas is part of the structure, is part of what it's about.
Yes, all right. Yes, perhaps it's just that I feel in myself such an absolute horror of putting theories as such into a book. I mean, certain philosophical ideas might... I perhaps put things about philosophy into my novels because I happen to know about philosophy. I mean, if I knew about sailing ships, I'd put sailing ships in. If I knew about hospitals, I'd put hospitals in. And in a way, as a novelist, I'd rather know about sailing ships and hospitals than about philosophy. But I don't think that the writer necessarily knows...
in fact, you think it's just material?
Well, I think, Tolstoy says this, but I don't. Why should we attend to him? We read his books, don't trust the writer, trust the tale. One has to see what he's actually achieved. And I think that, I can only think of one really good philosophical novel, which is Sartre's La Nausée, which I do admire very much, which might be said to be a philosophical novel, which is demonstrating something about contingency. Interestingly, it's a philosophical subject which is very close to the novelist's art. I mean, there's a kind of a good marriage there, as it were, between the novelist's art and the subject.
Well, let's take that, shall we? Jean-Paul Sartre's La Nausée. I mean, I agree with you. I think it's a magnificent book, but surely it also articulates a philosophical theory. In fact, my introduction to existentialism, so to speak, was reading that novel, and I thought that novel actually expressed an existentialist view, and it's rather marvellous. I mean, in the form of a work of fiction. It may well be, as you say, unique, but the fact that it exists at all shows that it can be done, doesn't it?
Yes. You seem to be driving me to say something.
I'm not
to say.
Yes, I think there's a genuine difference of opinion between you and me, Iris,
yes.
which we simply may not be able to resolve in this discussion. But you, it seems to me, are trying to say that philosophy as such has no place in imaginative writing, except insofar as it can simply be material, like anything else can be material. Whereas I think I want to say that there are really a number of exceptions to this, and that some major novels do make use of philosophical ideas, not just as material in that sense, but in ways which inform the book.